Welcome back to day 22. Today, I'm going to title Catching Yourself. One of the things that I've heard now for a few years has been I'm on the wagon. I'm off the wagon. Oh no, I can't get started back. Help me. I'm out of control. I'm off the wagon, you know. And I've talked many times about ways to catch yourself and today it's a little bit different because I've listened to some other coaches and I find it interesting that there's all of this conflict of to do or not to do, meaning setting rules that give yourself a cheat day or give yourself or don't give yourself a cheat day, give yourself a cheat meal, take vacation off, all of these different ideas. Okay, and I think when it comes down for me in catching myself, in tune eating is probably the number one thing that has saved me, because if I'm gaining weight, I know that I need to practice in tune eating all day, not just in the morning, because that means I'm eating too much at night. But it has saved me. It is the number one way I catch myself. I have another couple of days in the Transform sprinkled in about, what to do if you overdo it and you eat too much, and just kind of give yourself a break. And I want to say, if when you're catching yourself, I think the first thing maybe you can do is soothe yourself. I realize sometimes I'm one of these, it's funny even to call myself a coach, okay, of any kind: weight loss, transformation, health coach, wellness coach, basketball coach. That feels more like it. When my kids were growing up, I love coaching sports. But it's hard for me sometimes to even imagine here I am. And really, to be honest, I feel like I'm a transformation coach. I do. I feel like I'm a change coach. I feel like that what I've studied in how you can actually change your habits, how it works with your epigenetics and all of these things. And whether you're catching yourself, whether you're soothing yourself, it's learning. This is a lifelong game of going, I know that will trigger me. I'll give you an example. If I know I have something coming up, we've got to look ahead now. Gone are the days. I think we've proven this in every course, maybe, and maybe it's just learning. Okay, not my courses. We just learn as we get older, I hope. We've proven that we cannot fly. That there's nothing off the cuff. Okay, until it becomes ironclad part of your DNA. It's part of my DNA now to take a walk every day. In fact, when I have an unusually busy week and I don't get an hour and a half a day of movement, it really, I do have to find time in the next week or two to catch up with that. Knowing those things about myself is how I catch myself. So it's not only being able to soothe yourself, but first of all, it's knowing yourself. And we'll talk more about soothing, but it's knowing yourself. By now, I said you're going to hear more and more coming up in Transform 3, learning who you are. And who we are changes. That's the one thing that causes more problems in marriages than anything, because women change every decade, big, major, massive changes every decade. Men, usually the guy you marry is the guy you got until maybe a midlife crisis, but who you marry is who you get with a man. And a woman every decade is, we're the queens of reinvention. Get off the couch. Let's do something different. Spruce up this house. Let's rearrange the furniture. I know some of you guys do that. I don't do that. But catching yourself, it's knowing yourself. So you don't have to catch yourself, because you're looking in the future here now. You're thinking ahead and you're planning and you're going, okay, next week I know I've got a photo shoot. This is an example. Those are stressful days for me. I know that even though I want to be so stressed out, those are days I must exercise. I need the mental clarity. So whatever I have to do around that photo shoot to make sure I don't miss my exercise, that's catching myself, because I know myself. I hope this is speaking to you, whether it's a family dinner, because it does go back to planning, one of our core principles here in Transform 2. But it goes back to knowing there's always tailgating in the summertime. We always eat more. We always travel more. We always do more. Listen, you are not getting any younger. You are not going to be able to re engineer much more than what you're doing currently. And that's making peace. That's knowing yourself. And it may be that several days up to, when you go, you are more cognizant of the water. You're more cognizant of the protein. You're preparing yourself. What would an athlete do? I can tell you days before a photo shoot, I'm not eating anything that will inflame me. I'm not. I don't care if it's Memorial Day weekend. I don't care if it's 4th of July. If I have a photo shoot on July the 5th, I know that the inflammation would be there. Same. So it's just an example of planning for that. I love that. I'll plan stuff every day after major holidays or on Mondays so that every Monday put me to work. So on the weekend, I don't splurge too much. But those are all ways of catching yourself. How can you catch yourself? Listen, I know that with these special guests and stuff, we're deeper into, binge eating disorders and different disorders and normal eating and all of that, and at the end of the day, Lisa really is just a motivational coach. I study enough of the nutrition because I'm arming myself. I want to study enough of the emotional eating and the normal eating and the disordered eating so that I can help myself and other people. I want to be armed with the knowledge, like catching yourself before you fall. And that's knowing yourself. And then I guess, you can say when you're headed down that way, maybe it is an alarm for self-care and maybe it's time for soothing yourself. I self-soothe a lot at my house. I used to be on Zoom meetings all day or flying in airports all day or running up and down the hall, chasing patients all day or taking care of patients. It was just go, 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 go. From the time I rolled out of bed at 300 pounds, and a lot of it was just on webinars when I wasn't flying, but I did fly nearly every week for a whole decade. Oh, millions of miles. Trust me. Boy, I don't miss those days, but I would roll out of bed and there was never any thought to self-care. There wasn't even sometimes a minute for my spiritual practices, let alone these other daily practices. And part of knowing yourself is your routine, is part of what works for you, part of what puts you in a happy place. And then to catch yourself is knowing yourself, but then soothing yourself. How do you soothe? How do you self-soothe? Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever journaled about self-soothing? Have you ever even thought about it? About how to just relax and take away. How can I just disconnect? I mean, this is skill power here we're using, okay? When we're talking about catching yourself, the way you catch yourself is self-soothing, is self-care. The fact that you can take the time to take the breaths, to practice mindfulness, if it's the summertime and you can, to be able to plant your feet on the grass or go take a walk or just stretch for a few minutes. Just get up wherever you are and stretch. Stretching for 5 minutes a day has all kinds of benefits. You'll hear more about that coming up. But self-soothing, these are just ways to calm down, and it all comes back to balance. Not only are we trying to balance our life, our diet, bringing in new vegetables, right? Don't forget our challenges with bringing in an extra vegetable or a new kind of fish, or, bringing in those fresh fruits and vegetables are different. But yeah, we're trying to soothe ourselves with taking time for ourselves, with self-care, the breathing, self-compassion. Such a good form of self-soothing. I find a lot of times petting my dogs, my animals curled up on the sofa or sitting on my bed with my dogs at my feet. I listen to a lot of jazz. What about soothing imagery? Could you come up with something like that? Seeing some images that might help you be able to see the next level you in a really calm, so back to my calm, relaxed environment, putting yourself in that kind of situation, whether you just can take a bath and you're listening to the music, soothing smells. A lot of people are into essential oils. I love candles. And oh gosh, the ocean's kind of smells, that kind of thing. I consider it self-soothing to go take a walk on the beach. It can be very frustrating. A lot of times I don't just go down there for, just to walk on the beach and come back, because even though I live close, it's still a commitment to go down there. I only live a few miles away, but so it can take up, usually half the day. And I have to plan that. That goes back to this whole idea of self-care. And the whole idea behind soothing yourself and in doing that, so you don't have to catch yourself. And back to this rule thing, if you have some guidelines, to me, in tune eating is kind of a guideline. I'm doing it the way my body tells me, but it helps me reset myself every day. For me, I have a rule about walking 30 minutes every day. I enjoy that. For me, I have a rule about snacking. I do my best not to snack. I do my best to eat something, when I'm hungry in the morning, wait till I'm hungry again in the afternoon. Sometimes it's a little bit earlier in the day and I might have a snack to hold over for dinner. I realize that it gets easier for me the less I care about it. I know all the ways. I know how to stay full from protein. I know the power of sleep. I know that you need to drink that water every day. I know that we need our self-care. I know that we need our meditation, our downtime, our planning time, our 2 to 4. I know that everything matters. All of those are ways you catch yourself. Because in there are ways of being mindful, all the different breathing techniques, surround ground, going outside, the mindfulness practice, listening, going to YouTube, finding a short mindfulness meditation, that's 5 or 10 minutes, putting in your headphones, walking out. You could do it in the middle of an argument. You could do it if you were frustrated at work. All of those are ways to catch yourself. I think most coaches teach that breathing is probably the best way to catch yourself. Removing yourself from the environment is another big way. I've talked about that before, that to pause and change your environment. If like, oh gosh, it might be one of those days I might try to eat my face off, do something different, get out of the house, walk away. All of these are ways to catch yourself. Become an expert at catching yourself. Because if you'll become an expert at catching yourself, you won't have to become an expert at climbing back on the wagon. You won't have to become an expert at, now what do I do that it's been weeks and I haven't walked and I haven't cared about what I ate and I just never even tracked any calories, or I didn't even focus on protein, or I never even tried to make sure I ate my pastry at the end of the meal. Whatever it is, we're all different. So many of you guys, you get this and you're layering these things and you're letting these other things fall away, So, part of catching yourself and knowing yourself is also celebrating yourself. Celebrating yourself. This is such a big, important piece of the puzzle. you know, just to be able to look at how far you've come, and instead of those negative thoughts taking over, claiming and stopping that negative thought before it comes and going, but wait a minute. Look at all these things I've done. Look at the person I am today. Look at how I'm able to catch myself before I say too much before my husband. Look at how I'm able to stop that thought of, I wonder if that was meant negative for me. Look at how I'm able to celebrate myself every day. Look at how at night when I go to bed and I think about how the day went, I'm able to reflect and look back and go, wow, I've practiced in tune eating. I had some protein. I feel really good about the new things I'm learning. You know, I really didn't beat myself up today. I knew that if I wanted those cookies, I could have them tomorrow. I knew that I'm planning ahead because I'm catching myself. Celebrate yourself. It's another way to catch yourself. I can't wait to see you on day 23. That's tomorrow, and that's my favorite day. So go through your affirmations. Make sure that you use today and something about how can you catch yourself? What are the ways that you've been catching yourself? And how can you celebrate yourself? And hey, how can you even know yourself better? Those are all ways. And then how can you soothe yourself? I'll see you tomorrow on day 23.